Put that phone away. This area isn't for you. The words cracked through the terminal like thunder on glass. Heads turned. A moment ago, the air smelled of coffee and jet fuel. Now, it smelled of judgment. The manager, white shirt, clipped badge, brittle smile stood by the check-in counter, his voice cutting above the intercom. A black man holding a phone froze mid-record, calm, measured. Not defiant, not submissive, just still. "You heard me," the manager barked again, stepping closer. "You people think you can film anything you want. Not here." The crowd didn't move, but you could feel the ripple eyes darting, whispers building. A mother pulled her child closer. Someone muttered, "Just comply, man." Someone else whispered, "That was unnecessary." The black traveler lowered his phone slowly. "I'm documenting an incident," he said evenly, "not causing one." "Oh, don't get smart with me," the manager shot back. "Security!" The announcement over the speakers faded into background noise as tension took over the room. The phone's red recording light glowed faintly against his fingertips, a single pulse of quiet resistance. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus Carter. He didn't flinch when two guards approached. He'd seen this before, different uniforms. Same energy. "Sir, step aside," one said, hand already on the radio. Marcus turned his head slightly, eyes calm as water but sharp as reflection. "Is filming misconduct now?" The manager crossed his arms. "Filming? No. Harassment of staff? Yes. You people always play victim." That line cut through the space like a slap, harder than volume, sharper than logic. Marcus said nothing. He just looked at the manager, the way a storm studies a tree before deciding whether to strike. Inside, silence wasn't weakness, it was calibration. Behind him, a teenage girl whispered to her mother. "He didn't even raise his voice." The mother nodded softly. He shouldn't have to. Somewhere near Gate 14, the hum of engines mixed with the rising static of conscience. Security radios crackled. Phones lifted discreetly. The scene had transformed, a public space becoming a courtroom without walls. The manager straightened his tie, pretending control. "Delete the footage," he ordered. Marcus met his eyes. "No." The word was quiet, but it carried like thunder under marble floors. Marcus Carter didn't argue. He simply slipped his phone into his coat pocket and took one step back, letting the chaos speak louder than he ever would. The airport buzzed around him, the rhythmic hum of rolling suitcases, the sharp hiss of espresso machines, the mechanical calm of routine. But here, in this corner of the terminal, everything had gone still. A guard whispered into his radio. The manager folded his arms, pride swelling like armor. "Typical attitude," he muttered. "Think a camera gives him power." Marcus exhaled slowly. His tone was almost conversational. "I wasn't filming you," he said. "I was filming how people get treated when they don't fit your picture of who belongs." The manager scoffed. "Save your speeches for social media." He turned away, signaling the guards to keep watch. Marcus walked toward the window, his reflection merging with the runway outside, planes gliding against the dusk. In the glass, he didn't look like a man under attack. He looked like someone waiting for the truth to catch up. He reached for his boarding pass again, brushing a thumb over the printed name, Marcus D. Carter. No titles, no hint of the empire behind it. The same name that sat atop contracts, aircraft registrations, and a holding company with over 10,000 employees. But none of that mattered here. Not yet. A young woman at the boarding gate, early 20s, headset askew, eyes alert, kept glancing over. She recognized the name when the manager had shouted it earlier. Her lips parted slightly. "Carter. Like Carter Airways?" she thought. She hesitated. Fear overrode instinct. Marcus sat down on the bench beside Gate 14, silent. He didn't reach for his phone, didn't call anyone, just watched the security lights flicker across polished floors, the way storms flicker before rain. Behind him, the manager was still talking, performing for the small audience of travelers. "He's lucky I don't call airport police." Always the same story. Claim discrimination, post a clip, go viral. Laughter from a couple nearby. Awkward. Forced. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but his heartbeat never rose. Because this wasn't the first time he'd been the calm center of someone else's storm. 15 years ago, he had worked in this very terminal as a mechanic trainee, fixing engines in silence, while men like this walked past him without seeing him. Back then, silence had been survival. Tonight, it was strategy. He checked his watch, sleek, silver, no brand visible. A small green light blinked on the side. To anyone else, it was just a smartwatch. To Marcus, it was a trigger, a connection, a quiet reminder of the network built under his name. Across the terminal, the young woman at the gate finally moved. She whispered to her colleague, "That's him. I think that's Marcus Carter." Her voice trembled. Her colleague shook his head. "No way. The Marcus Carter?" But her gut said yes, and her conscience was louder than her fear. She stood. "Sir," she called softly, almost apologetically. "I think there's been a mistake." The manager spun around. "What did you say?" The girl hesitated. "I saw his name on the manifest. Private clearance list." The manager's voice dropped to ice. "Mind your own business." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, pregnant with the kind of truth that always finds its moment. Marcus looked up, his voice keyed, but unshakable. "I told you," he said. "I wasn't filming to shame anyone. I was documenting a system." The manager smirked. "And what system is that?" Marcus met his gaze. "The one that still thinks respect is a privilege." The girl froze. The guards looked unsure. And somewhere far down the runway, a plane took off, engines roaring like applause for what was about to come. The manager's voice rose again, sharp and theatrical. "Sir, this is your final warning. Security is coming." "Ugh." He said it loud enough for everyone in line to hear a performance, not a policy. Two guards approached, boots clicking against the marble floor. Behind them, whispers spread like wildfire. What did he do? "Filming staff, I think." Always some drama. Marcus didn't move. He sat with his hands folded on his lap, eyes steady, posture unshaken like a judge waiting for the room to realize it was on trial. One of the guards, younger, uncertain, leaned in. "Sir, maybe just step outside. We'll sort it out quietly." Marcus looked up at him. "Quietly," he repeated almost to himself. That's always the word they use right before the truth disappears. The older guard straightened, uneasy. "We don't make the rules." "No," Marcus replied. "You just enforce the bias." The crowd murmured louder. Phones tilted up, subtle but deliberate. A few passengers started recording not to help, but to watch. Spectacle over solidarity. At the check-in counter, the young boarding agent, the same woman who had seen his name, gripped her headset tighter. Her lips moved fast into the mic. "Control, I need a supervisor. Yes, about a Mr. Carter." The response crackled faintly. "Handle it locally." She swallowed hard. "Copy that." The manager caught her whispering and snapped. "Step away from the desk." She froze, eyes darting toward Marcus. He gave the smallest shake of his head, "Not yet." Across the hall, an older man in a blue suit muttered, "All this over a phone? You'd think he was smuggling a bomb." Another voice, a woman in line, answered, "No, he's just black in the wrong place." The words dropped like stones into silence. Marcus turned his gaze toward them, not in anger, but in quiet acknowledgement. For a brief second, someone had said the truth out loud. The manager leaned over the counter. "Delete the footage, apologize, and maybe we can let you board." "Who?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "You mean after you humiliated me in front of a crowd?" The man's jaw tightened. "I'm protecting my staff." "From what?" Marcus asked. "Accountability?" That question lingered. It wasn't shouted, but it carried weight, the kind that rearranges air. The intercom above them chimed. "Attention all passengers. Flight delays expected due to ground operations." A ripple of confusion moved through the terminal. Ground operations? Marcus's watch blinked once, a quiet green pulse. The guards glanced at the display boards flickering behind them. Flights paused, statuses freezing mid-update. The hum of the terminal shifted, subtle but undeniable. The young boarding agent whispered under her breath, "What's happening?" Marcus looked up, voice calm. "Consequences," he said. The manager frowned. "What does that mean?" Marcus didn't answer. He just stood smooth, deliberate, and straightened his jacket. "You'll find out soon enough." The older guard hesitated. "Sir, are you threatening?" "No," Marcus cut in softly. "I'm reminding." A woman filming near the newsstand whispered, "This is going online. It's about to blow up." But Marcus didn't need a video. He had something better. His silence was strategic, his patience weaponized. And with every second that passed, the power in the room began to shift quietly, invisibly like an engine changing altitude. The terminal's buzz had turned uneasy. Security radios whispered over each other, announcements looped, but nobody was really listening anymore. Every pair of eyes seemed to orbit the same calm figure, Marcus Carter, standing still while everyone else unraveled. The manager barked orders like a man desperate to prove he still mattered. "Keep him here. I want that video deleted now." But one voice, small and steady, cut through the noise. "Sir, I think you should stop." It came from behind the counter, the young boarding agent, headset askew, voice trembling just enough to reveal her courage. The manager snapped his head around. "Excuse me?" She swallowed, but didn't step back. "I checked the list. His name's there. Marcus D. Carter. Priority clearance. Private manifest." The words landed like dropped glass, sharp, undeniable. The older guard shifted uncomfortably. The younger one blinked. Even the crowd fell quiet. The manager tried to laugh it off. "Oh, so now you're an investigator? That's confidential information? You want to lose your job?" But she didn't move. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. "You said he was trespassing. But he's cleared for this terminal. I saw it with my own eyes." Marcus watched her carefully. Calm pride flickered behind his stillness. He didn't interrupt, didn't grandstand. He simply let the truth find its own voice. The manager leaned closer, lowering his tone the way people do when power starts slipping. "You don't know what you're talking about, Emily." She flinched at her name being used like a threat, but she didn't back down. "I know what I saw." The crowd shifted again. A businessman lowered his phone, whispering to his companion, "He's that Carter? Carter Airways?" His companion frowned. "No, can't be. He'd have a team, cameras, security." Emily turned toward them, her voice firmer now. "He doesn't need any of that." A ripple of recognition spread through the terminal, half doubt, half awe. Phones tilted back up, this time not to mock, but to document. The manager's voice cracked. "Enough. This man is not who you think he is." Emily faced him. "Maybe that's the problem. You never asked who he was before deciding what he wasn't." The silence that followed was electric. Even the intercom seemed to hold its breath. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and measured. "You don't have to defend me," he said, "but thank you for remembering what integrity sounds like." Emily nodded once, blinking away tears she didn't expect. A passenger nearby, an older black woman with silver braids, stood from her chair and said, loud enough for all to hear, "She did what the rest of us forget to do. She saw him." "Oh." The crowd's murmurs turned softer now, less suspicion, more shame. The balance was shifting again, subtle but irreversible. The manager hissed to the guards, "Escort them both out. I'm not losing control of this floor." But it was too late. Control wasn't his anymore. It was already walking out of his grasp in the calm, steady footsteps of a man who never needed to raise his voice. Marcus turned to Emily quietly. "Step back now, it's about to get loud." She hesitated, then obeyed, because something in his tone, firm, certain, almost prophetic, told her the real story was only just beginning. And outside, beyond the glass, a row of Carter Airways jets gleamed under the floodlights, waiting. The manager's face burned red, the kind of color that only comes from fear wearing the mask of authority. He slammed his palm on the counter. "I said enough. Security, remove him, now." The older guard hesitated. The younger one didn't move at all. Emily stepped back, her hands trembling near her headset. Marcus stayed perfectly still, no anger, no retreat, just that impossible calm that made everyone else look louder. The manager stormed forward, grabbed the phone from Marcus's pocket, and snapped, "You're done filming in my terminal." Gasps scattered through the room, the sound of something crossing a line. Marcus didn't resist. He simply looked down at the man's hand, still clutching his phone, and said, quietly, "That's theft." The manager sneered. "That's protocol." His reflection glared back at him from the glass walls, smaller, meaner. But for Marcus, time slowed. The world dimmed, and the airport around him melted into memory. A fluorescent hallway 15 years ago. He was 25, broke, grease on his sleeves, just a mechanic trying to clock out. He had carried his tools through this same terminal when a guard stopped him at the gate. "You can't walk through here," the guard said. Marcus explained, showed his badge, his hands still stained from turbine oil. The guard snatched it away. "Fake! You don't belong here." He'd slept in his car that night, just outside the runway lights, watching the same planes he repaired take off without him. He promised himself then, "If I ever own the sky, No one will be thrown out of it again. And now here he was. Same airport, same tone, different power. The flash of memory dissolved. Marcus blinked back into the present. The manager was still shouting, waving the phone like a trophy. Look at him. Filming staff, refusing orders. What did I tell you? Typical behavior. The words echoed off the marble like a verdict. Some people nodded. Others looked away. Emily whispered to no one in particular. He didn't even raise his voice. Marcus finally stepped forward. His shadow swallowed the manager's reflection. "Return my property," he said, voice calm but final. The manager smirked, holding the phone higher. "Make me." That line snapped something invisible. The crowd wasn't on his side anymore. They could feel it. Even the guards shifted their stance, suddenly unsure of which uniform represented the truth. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. "You know what's funny about power," he said. "It's loudest right before it fails." The manager blinked, thrown off balance. Then the intercom blared again this time. A new announcement. "Attention passengers, boarding delays extended for all Carter Airways flights. Please remain in the terminal." The crowd murmured. Emily's headset buzzed. "Control to gate 14, a voice said through the static. "Confirm presence of Marcus Carter." Her eyes widened. Confirmed. "Then prepare for lockdown procedures. CEO authorization code incoming." Emily looked at Marcus. He hadn't moved, hadn't touched a thing, but his watchlight blinked twice, green, then amber. The manager frowned, his grip loosening. "What did you just do?" Marcus took a step forward. The air changed thicker, heavier. He reached out, retrieved his phone from the man's stunned hand, and said, "I just reminded your system who built it." The silence afterward was suffocating. A child's voice broke it small, curious, pure. "Mom, is he in trouble?" The mother shook her head slowly. "No, baby, he's fixing one." Outside, the runway lights flickered like heartbeat monitors. Something was shifting, not in volume, but in gravity. For a long moment, no one moved. The hum of the terminal filled the silence like static before lightning. Marcus slipped his phone into his palm and pressed one button. A quiet tone chimed. "Rachel," he said, voice calm as glass. "Protocol 1. Confirm." Across the line, her tone was sharp, immediate. "Confirmed, sir. Ground control and operations are notified. Do you want public or silent mode?" "Silent," Marcus replied. "Let them figure it out on their own." The manager laughed, forced and brittle. "What is this, some game?" But his words stumbled as every digital screen in the terminal flickered at once. Departure boards blinked. Flight numbers froze mid-scroll. Announcements cut to static. Passengers turned. Confused murmurs rising. "What's happening? Is the system down? Why is every flight paused?" Marcus stayed perfectly still, hands folded again, as if watching a rehearsal he'd already memorized. His voice was steady, low enough for only the closest few to hear. "When arrogance becomes policy, systems need to reset." The manager stepped closer. You did this?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. His watch blinked again, green, then gold. From somewhere deeper in the terminal, a voice over the PA sputtered back to life. "Attention passengers, all Carter Airways operations are temporarily suspended. Please stand by for further instruction." The name hit like a gavel. Carter Airways. The crowd stirred, heads turning toward Marcus, whispers colliding. "Wait, did they say Carter? As in him?" "No way." Emily's headset crackled. She pressed a finger to her earpiece. "Control just sent an override code," she whispered. "It's signed, MD Carter." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "That's you, isn't it?" Marcus's reply was barely above a breath. "Not yet." The older guard shifted, uneasy. "Sir, what's going on?" Marcus looked at him, voice even. "Accountability. It's been delayed for years, but I think we just called it in." The manager tried to steady himself. "You think you can shut down my terminal with a phone call?" Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "Not your terminal," he said softly. "Mine." He turned slightly toward the crowd, scanning the faces, the passengers, the workers, the silent witnesses. Each expression was a mirror of disbelief turning into realization. Rachel's voice came through again in his ear. "Sir, all departures are grounded. Legal and communications are online. The board is aware. Do you want escalation?" Marcus's answer came slow, deliberate. "No escalation, just observation." The PA crackled again, uncertain, like the system itself was afraid of what it was saying. "Carter Airways protocol lock engaged." All flights will remain grounded, pending review by executive command. Emily stared, half whisper, half prayer. He's not just a passenger. Marcus finally turned to the manager, the man still standing behind the counter, clutching his badge like it could save him. "You've spent your whole career managing people you thought were beneath you," Marcus said. "Today, you'll learn what management really means." The manager stepped back. "You can't talk to me like that." Marcus's tone never rose. "I didn't. I spoke to you. The difference is, you're finally listening." A ripple of movement spread through the crowd, cameras rising, breaths held. It wasn't a riot. It was recognition. The sound of hierarchy folding in on itself. Emily whispered into her headset, "Do we stand down?" A voice replied, trembling, "Follow his lead." And Marcus Carter, the man they'd accused of disruption, just nodded once, a quiet king reclaiming his crown. Outside, on the runway, jet engines idled, grounded. The empire he built had paused mid-flight, waiting for his next command. The manager's breath came shallow now, pride collapsing into panic. He looked around, searching for authority, but every badge in the room had already lost its meaning. The PA voice trembled again, uncertain. "Attention! A message from Carter Airways Executive Command." Every screen lit up in unison. The company logo, silver wings over a deep black background, glowed across the terminal. Under it, a single line of text scrolled in clean white letters. "All operations temporarily halted at the request of CEO Marcus D. Carter." The crowd froze. Mouths open, cameras lifted. Then the collective murmur. "Wait, he's the CEO? That's him? Carter, as in the Carter?" The manager's voice cracked. No, this is some mistake." He turned back to Marcus, his words stumbling. You're not." Marcus took one slow step forward. Every movement was precise, deliberate, quiet. He wasn't performing, he was reclaiming. "I told you," he said, voice low, clear, and unshakable. "I wasn't filming for attention. I was recording accountability." The manager's lips trembled. You shut down my terminal." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "You called it your terminal," he said. "That's the problem." He took another step closer. The crowd made space without being asked. "You shouted at a man for filming," Marcus continued. "But what you really shouted at was your own reflection. You just didn't know who was standing in front of you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his ID card, black matte, silver letters embossed across it. "Marcus D. Carter, founder, CEO, Carter Airways International." The room stopped breathing. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause mid-hum. The manager staggered backward, eyes wide, voice barely a whisper. You can't be serious." Marcus nodded once. "Completely." He turned slightly, looking at Emily, the young agent who'd spoken up when no one else did. "Thank you for remembering your training," he said. "Integrity isn't written in policy, it's written in choices." Emily's voice trembled. "Sir, I just did what was right." "And that," Marcus said softly, "is why you'll have a place here long after he's gone." He turned back to the manager. "You called me a disruption, a problem, a threat." Marcus's tone sharpened, not loud, but cutting. "The only thing I disrupted was your comfort with injustice." A woman near the cafe clapped once, softly. Then another joined. And another, until the terminal filled with the sound, steady, rising, not out of fandom, but relief. The manager shook his head, backing away. "You set this up?" Marcus looked him dead in the eye. "No, you did. I just gave you the stage." He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You called me a fraud, in the company I own." The line landed like thunder wrapped in silk. Gasps spread through the crowd, the cinematic silence before the storm of realization. Cameras flashed. Phones captured every frame. But Marcus didn't smile. He simply looked around the room and said, "This isn't revenge, it's recognition." Then he turned to Emily. "Call ground control. Tell them to resume operations but keep his access suspended." The manager's ID beeped red on his chest, locked out. A sound so small yet so final. The crowd erupted, not wild applause, but that deep human sound people make when truth finally lands. Marcus didn't raise his hand or his voice. He just said quietly, "Let's bring some dignity back to this terminal." And with that, he walked away calm, composed, while the world behind him tried to catch up to the weight of his silence. The echo of that final line still hung in the air. "You called me a fraud in the company I own." Huh. And for a moment, the entire terminal stood suspended in disbelief, like gravity itself had paused to listen. The manager's badge blinked red again. Access denied. A quiet chirp, then silence the sound of a career flatlining in real time. Emily's headset buzzed. Control here. Confirm employee ID lockout authorization, Marcus D. Carter. She hesitated, glanced at Marcus, then said into her mic, confirmed. All across the counter, computer screens went dark. The staff's monitors froze mid-command, each one flashing a line of text. Session terminated by corporate oversight. The older guard lowered his radio. Sir, what's happening? Marcus turned to him, calm but firm. Accountability. It's finally boarding. The manager lunged forward, voice cracking under the weight of panic. You can't fire me. I've worked here 20 years. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. 20 years and not one moment of learning. He gestured toward Emily. You see her? She's been here for 2. And in 2 minutes, she showed more leadership than you did in 2 decades. The man's chest heaved. You think this crowd makes you a hero? Marcus shook his head slowly. I don't need to be a hero. I need you to see yourself. Then he spoke into his watch, voice soft, measured the same voice that now commanded an entire fleet. Rachel, initiate personnel review. Terminate gate management for cause. Log the incident under code bias, 014. M. Confirmed, Rachel's voice answered. Her tone was calm, efficient, the sound of a guillotine made of data. The manager's phone buzzed in his pocket. He fumbled it open. An email from HR. Subject line, employment termination effective immediately. His knees weakened. For the first time, he wasn't shouting. He was whispering. This isn't fair. Marcus's reply was a scalpel. Fairness was never your problem, it was your responsibility. The crowd was silent again, not out of fear, out of awe. Because justice, when it finally happens right in front of you, doesn't need music or lights. It breathes. Emily's voice came over the intercom, calm but sure. Attention passengers. Carter Airways operations have resumed. Thank you for your patience. Applause erupted, not thunderous, but pure, collective, human. People nodded at Marcus as he passed. Some whispered thank yous. Others just stood taller. The manager slumped against the counter, staring at his reflection in the dead monitor. He looked smaller now, like the room had shrunk around him. Security approached quietly, not as enforcers, but as escorts of consequence. Marcus stopped beside him one last time. I told you the system needed a reset, he said softly. This was it. The man didn't reply. He couldn't. There are no words when the truth finally holds up a mirror. As Marcus walked toward Gate 14, the lights brightened again. Engines hummed outside, grounded jets now ready to rise. Passengers clapped once more, not because they understood every detail, but because they'd just seen something rare, power used for grace. Marcus turned one last time, his voice carrying just enough to reach every corner. I didn't raise my voice, I raised the standard. And with that, he stepped through the gate. Calm, composed, unbothered, while behind him, the system he built took a deep breath and started over. The engines outside roared back to life, low and steady like thunder rolling away from a storm that had finally spent itself. Boarding lights blinked green again. Passengers began to move, but the silence inside the terminal wasn't ordinary. It was reverent, cleansed. Marcus Carter stood at the threshold of Gate 14, his figure outlined by the afternoon light pouring through the glass. He wasn't triumphant. He wasn't angry. He was simply centered. Emily approached, hesitant. Sir? He turned slightly, his tone soft but grounded. You did well. Her eyes shone with tears she didn't expect. I just couldn't stay quiet. Marcus smiled faintly. That's how every change begins. Behind them, passengers murmured his name, not like a celebrity, like a truth rediscovered. An older woman, the one with silver braids, caught his eye. She placed a hand over her heart and whispered, "Thank you." Marcus nodded gently. "Don't thank me. Just remember." He turned back toward the window, watching one of his jets taxi onto the runway. The silver fuselage caught the sunlight, reflecting the name Carter Airways across the glass. For the first time all day, he allowed himself a breath, long, deep, human. A voice from behind the counter, a replacement supervisor this time, called out nervously, "Mr. Carter, sir. Are we clear to resume?" Marcus didn't look back. "You're clear," he said. "And next time, make sure the people are too." He started walking toward the jet bridge, but then paused, turning slightly, his voice carrying across the hall. "Respect doesn't live in titles," he said. "It lives in how you treat the people who can't defend themselves." The terminal went still again, not out of fear, out of recognition. Marcus's phone vibrated once. A message from Rachel. Protocol 1 complete. All systems restored. Public sentiment positive. Trending globally. He chuckled softly. Of course it is. He reached the door, hand on the frame, and looked back one last time. Security had escorted the former manager out quietly. No spectacle, no revenge, just consequence. Marcus's gaze softened as he whispered, almost to himself, "Justice isn't loud, it's precise." Ugh. Then he stepped onto the jet bridge, light pooling around his shoulders, the hum of engines rising beneath his feet. Outside, a jet lifted into the sky, smooth, effortless, absolute. And as it climbed, so did something else, a collective belief that dignity could still win. The screen faded to black. A single line appeared, in white. He didn't raise his voice, he raised the standard.